Vandermeulen, Training Coordinator for Wisconsin Facets. On behalf of our entire Wisconsin Facets staff, I'd like to thank you for joining us today. Our webinar today is the Disability Rights Wisconsin's Victim Advocacy Program, and our presenters today are Jill Gonzalez and Natalia Hildner. Jill has a long history of assisting parents who have children with disabilities in the school system. She is a parent of an adult child with disabilities. In 2017, she joined the Victim Advocacy Program to assist victims of crime. Natalia is the Advocacy and Outreach Specialist for Disability Rights Wisconsin's Victim Advocacy Program. Her role is to provide direct advocacy services to clients and to provide outreach to community services providers. Today, it gives me great pleasure to introduce to you both Jill and Natalia. Ladies.
Good afternoon, this is Jill. Thank you, Bonnie, for such a good introduction. Since I used to work for Wisconsin Facets, Bonnie knows a lot about me. And so I'm just gonna pass it on to Natalia so she can tell you a little bit more about her and some of her background.
Hello. Sorry, is there feedback?
We were, but I think it's better right now.
Okay. So I just wanted here, I might have to switch rooms if there's feedback. That's fine. 1 second. Let me just try it in another room.
Okay. Okay. Natalia is quickly going to switch rooms. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. She is just quickly going to switch rooms. There's too much feedback. We thought we could do this together, but she's going into her office.
All right, how is this?
Much better.
How is this?
Much better.
Okay, great. All right. Thank you, Bonnie, and for the introduction. Just to give a little bit of
until she gets on, why don't you put this in the chat, your answers? How many attendees know about Disability Rights Wisconsin or have used our services before?
Okay, and Natalia, we're ready for you whenever you're ready.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. Yeah, I just wanted to let you know a little bit about the history of my experience.
Bonnie, can you let us know?
I did, Jill, and so I don't know, you might be having a technical problem there. Jill, you need to, if you can just mute yourself. Natalia is talking now.
Hello?
Go ahead, Natalia.
Hi, so yeah, I started my work in victim advocacy abroad, actually, in India. I worked with an anti-human trafficking organization called Free the Slaves, where we focused on empowering communities which were in debt bondage in very impoverished areas in the northern regions of India for prevention and intervention of mostly sex trafficking. And then when I got here in Madison, which is my hometown, I worked with Dane County Rape Crisis Center as the outreach specialist. And now I'm here with Disability Rights Wisconsin. So thank you so much for our invitation here and looking forward to our presentation.
Okay, and thank you. And Jill, we're ready for you.
Okay, so Natalia actually has the first slide and she's going to introduce you to the Wisconsin P&A, which is called Disability Rights Wisconsin, because the Victim Advocacy Program is housed at Disability Rights Wisconsin, so it's in the umbrella of Disability Rights Wisconsin.
Okay, thank you. Natalia?
All right, so The P&A program, so DRW is a protection and advocacy agency for people with disabilities in the state of Wisconsin. This is a designation that we hold that was given to us in the mid to late 70s that came out of legislative work coming out of Congress, which talked about protection and advocacy on behalf of the government as institutions were closing and people were being deinstitutionalized in a rapid way. And this, just to give a brief history of the disability rights movements, this was much due to an investigative journalist, Geraldo Rivera, who basically did a full investigative journalism investigation, so a journalist investigation on an institution called Willowbrook, which was a school for children with intellectual disabilities. Where he was able to enter or with a spy camera after he had himself done some initial investigation on the fact that these children were, and this is a direct quote, living in filth and squalor, clothes in tatters, in rooms less comfortable and cheery than cages in which we put animals in a zoo. And so often from here, just from the very meager circumstances that these children were forced to live in, it was an institution, Willowbrook was an institution that was supposed to only house up to 4,000 children, but it had 6,000 children, so it was overcrowded as well. So after this journalist, Geraldo Rivera, basically revealed this severe injustice and oppression towards these children, the governments at the time began to enact what we now know as several, or not several, not enough, but a few laws that protect and advocate for people with disabilities, which Jill will talk about in more detail in further slides. So we're the protection and advocacy agency for this state, and every state in the US has one due to these laws that protect people with disabilities. We're a private nonprofit organization, and our mission is to advance the dignity, equality, and self-determination of people with disabilities, to pursue justice on matters related to human rights, related to human and legal rights. Yeah, thank you very much. I'll pass it on to Jill.
Okay, thank you. So let me just go over the core values in our programs, but before I do that, I just want to let you know DRW is governed by a board of directors with help from advisory councils. And, you know, when we first started out in 1977, we had 6 employees. Today, we have 3 offices, one in Madison, one in Milwaukee, and we have 4, I'm sorry, one in Rice Lake and one in Green Bay. So, and now there are over 70 people working here. So we have grown and you know, whenever there's some grants or programs that are available and we see that the disability component is missing, you know, we apply. And that's exactly what happened with our victim advocacy program. This program started, we got the grant in 2016 and got off in 2017. And actually that's when I came back. I worked for Disability Rights Wisconsin starting in 2009. I took a 2-year leave to start a disabilities program with the Ho-Chunk Nation and then came back in 2017. So our core values and programs, our core values, of course, is, you know, to promote diversity, not only for our clients, but for our staff, to make sure that we treat everyone with dignity. We really work to advocate for independence so people can live and be included in their own communities. We promote accessibility, so not only to programs such as Disability Rights Wisconsin, but, you know, accessible buildings, and also to be able to have advocates to help them understand their rights. Because if we're not accessible, they're not going to get help. That's the bottom line. So we always make sure that the accessibility also includes people who are there to help them. I mentioned inclusion. We want to make sure that they are included in public places and in their own communities. And we want to make sure that they have a quality of life, and that, you know, they are human just like anybody else. And so they have, you know, the human rights and liberation. And, you know, we specifically address disability related injustices at the intersection of disability, race, disability and gender, disability and gender-based violence, and more. Natalia is going to be talking a little bit about that a little later, but, you know, with some of the things going on in our nation right now, all these things and all these intersections are overlapping. So some of our programs, I mentioned that we are the P&A. So the P&A, or the Protection and Advocacy Agency, is Disability Rights Wisconsin. Within the P&A, there are several grants. One of them is called PAD. Now, a lot of them start with PA, which stands for Protection and Advocacy. So PAD is PADD. DD stands for Developmental Disabilities. So Protection and Advocacy for people with developmental disabilities. We have a PAMI grant. We have, you know, several grants. A PABS grant, which is Protection and Advocacy for Beneficiaries of Social Security. So just under that P&A umbrella, we have many grants. The next program I'll talk about is the Disability Benefits Program. And this is our, you know what? Nope, I was going to go to SS Managed Care. So some of these, I'm in schools, so the schools and civil rights, and also the victim advocacy. So some of these programs, because we are so busy day to day doing our own jobs, I'm not as familiar with, but and you can find out a bunch of information about all these programs on our website. Okay, so we have a disability drug benefit hotline for people who are on Medicare. Those advocates can help with explain how Medicare works, how Medicare care works with Medicaid. And they can inform you about the different Medicaid programs, and even how to get their medication help paid for. So that's our disability drug benefit hotline. If you want the number, it's actually 1-800-926-4862. We also have a family care and IRIS ombudsman program, and they kind of are the ombudsman and advocates for people who are on long-term adult programming called family care or IRIS. We also have a SS Managed Care external advocacy program. And that program helps people understand the enrollment process. They help explain rights and responsibilities as a member of a managed care organization. They can answer questions about the managed care organizations, or MCOs they're called. They can help get clients specialty care or medical equipment you need, and of course, any kind of information and referral. So now we are down to the Victim Advocacy Program, which I told you a little bit about. We started in 2017, and we have several members that we're going to talk about. Okay, Natalia.
All right, so I wanted to introduce some members of our team. We have our VOCA team, Victim Advocacy Program, including, of course, our dear Jill Gonzalez, who's been part of the program. How many years now, Jill?
Since I actually started in the fall of 2017.
Oh, wow, great. And then I just got started last year during the pandemic. And then we all work under the supervision of our managing attorney, Nadia Rosen, who's originally from New York, and does is able to provide a lot of legal information in order for us to assist our clients. We also have Ellie Jarvie, and an advocacy specialist who specializes in community institutions as well. Phyllis Greenberger, who's a member of our team who's been with DRW the longest. We often go to her with questions due to this because of her experience. She's the lead advocacy specialist and also specializes in community institutions, schools, and civil rights. And then we also have in the Milwaukee office, Lydia Hartlob, who also has a law degree and is a staff attorney, is a licensed lawyer who focuses on schools and civil rights, and also now works on limited certain immigration issues, is able to give immigration law information. And then in our Green Bay office, we have Pam Malin, who's our VAWA project coordinator, which Jill is going to talk about VAWA a little bit more. And then Elvita Erdman, who's another advocacy specialist. I love the fact that our team is a combination not just of legal experts, but also social work experts, such as Jill, who has her master's in social work, as well as Ellie, I believe. And then Elvita and myself and Lydia are all bilingual, so we can also provide services in Spanish for clients who prefer that.
Okay, so now I'm sure you want to know how we get funded. How does the Victim Advocacy Program get funded? It gets funded through a federal grant called VOCA, which VOCA stands for Victims of Crime Act. So I want to give you just a little brief history of VOCA. It was passed in 1984 by Congress and signed by the then President Ronald Reagan. It established the Crime Victims Fund that is used to support programs that provide services to victims of all types of crime. This fund comes directly from offender-generated revenue. So any fines that they have to pay goes into this pot of money, and it grows. And but there is a cap on how much money that can be distributed under the VOCA grant. The VOCA grant is administered, it's like the trickle down. So first it goes to the U.S. Department of Justice, and then the monies are distributed to each state, including U.S. territories and tribes, by the Office of Victims of Crime. Now that's the federal site, and down below I have the website. That's the first one. And there's a lot of information you can get off that website, and I encourage you to, if you have interest in this area, to check it out. So then after that, the Wisconsin Department of Justice administers the funds through their Office of Crime Victim Services. And then that money, Wisconsin's money, then is distributed through across Wisconsin, including the tribes. So in the amount that OCVS receives annually fluctuates. So, our grants start October 1st of each year and they end September 30th of each year. And, Naja, that's one of the things that she does is she, she writes in the proposal for our grant. And every time we're on like pins and needles, because sometimes they make us wait until almost to the end, like till September to find out what we're getting. But we could get more, or we can get less. I mean, we're happy with more, but sometimes it could be less as well. And like I said, the formula, it is excuse me, it is, there's a cap that is set by Congress, and I think it's in the billions, but that's for every state and every, anyone like for, like even for abuse, domestic abuse, sexual assault, any kind of victim programs in the state and nationally that covers. Okay, Natalia, take it away. Oh no, this is me. This is me, sorry. Okay, so the other grant that we get is called VAWA, or Violence Against Women's Act. This also was passed in 1994. And it is the first federal legislation that specifically recognized that domestic violence and sexual assault are crimes. Can you imagine that at some time they were not? That just kind of floors me, but it provides funding for programs and projects, and it is administered by the U.S. Department of Justice Office on Violence Against Women. They administer 19 grant programs aimed at ending violence and supporting survivors, while others are population specific, such as ours. VAWA was reauthorized in 2000, 2005, and 13, but was not reauthorized in 2018. But we still have some money, and Pam Malin out of our Green Bay office runs this program, and what she's doing is for activities is she's writing a healthy and safe relationships curriculum for adults with intellectual disabilities, and doing so she works with state experts and partners. She's going to pilot the curriculum in chosen sites in Wisconsin. For self-advocates, obviously we want to make sure that people can have the information to self-advocate. There's going to be an evaluation of the curriculum, and there's also going to be a lot of training and support to domestic violence and sexual assault agencies to use the curriculum with adults. So training the trainer type of support that Pam will give the people who are going to be using her curriculum. So the rights of victims and witnesses of crime in Wisconsin is within Wisconsin State Statute 950. So 950 talks about the definitions and victimization types, and then the victim rights. What are actually the victim rights? So the two definitions I want to cover is what does it mean by crime? So in the statute, it means an act committed in this state, which, if committed by a competent adult, would constitute a crime as defined in chapter 939.12. And that's actually the criminal statutes. Victim of crime means a person who has suffered physical, sexual, financial, or emotional harm as a result of a commission of a crime. So those are the two most important definitions. So what is the crime, and what does victim mean here in the statute? So victimization types, and these are the most common ones, but there are 26 different categories by the U.S. Department of Justice, and I had given you that the website in an earlier slide, but I encourage you to take a look. And actually, victimization types, it is not an exhausted list. Okay, so it's not, there can be an other category, right, that's not covered. But the most common are adult physical, sexual assault, assaulted, or if they were assaulted as children, but they're adults right now. child physical abuse and neglect, domestic family violence or teen dating, bullying, hate crimes, stalking, harassment, burglary, robbery, elder abuse, homicide, financial crimes, and the list goes on. So if you're interested in knowing about, you know, other crimes that's under US DOJ, Department of Justice, they have that list on their website.
So why it's necessary to provide victim services for people with disabilities? I know that seems like a very, for some, obvious question as far as why we needed to develop the VOCA program. However, I wanted to take this opportunity to talk about statistics and why there's a higher vulnerability, and also certain intervention methods that that advocates have to keep in mind, with a great understanding of how it's a problem of ableism, as well as racism and other oppressions for the reasons why these victimizations take place in the first place.
Excuse me, Natalia, this is Bonnie. Your webcam is turned off now. I don't know if something happened there.
No. Thank you for the reminder. Here we go. So even prior to the VOCA program, which only started a few years ago, DRW staff were working with survivors of crimes, abuse, harassments all the time, but didn't have a VOCA program such as VOCA to help people with disabilities post-victimization to help stabilize their lives. Now with the VOCA program, we're able to focus on that specifically. I'm going to focus specifically on sexual violence and domestic violence, because that is a big portion of the victimization type that we encounter with our clients. So as a victim advocate, we have an understanding that, or victim advocates have an understanding that abuse towards marginalized communities, or specifically people with disabilities, can be and is often a manifestation of society's ableism, racism, misogyny, homophobia, or other types of discrimination. The reason why we know this is because basically that's what abuse is, right? It's an abuse of power and control. And that comes from the false notion that anyone is superior to anyone else, and that a more privileged person has a sense of false power and control over somebody else. In the case of people with disabilities, there's a unique and power control dynamics experienced by people with disabilities. Abusers may target people with disabilities because they perceive them. Whether or not this is true is a whole nother discussion, but they perceive them as more isolated or more easily coerced into trusting someone. Abusers may assume that these survivors would not report to the police, to others, and may not be believed because of the fact that they're a person with disabilities, even though this is not true. Some abusers use power and control tactics that expressly target people with disabilities. And some examples of these would be coercion and threats, such as threatening to leave, like a guardian threatening to leave them, or emotional abuse, insults or shames about their disability, talking down to them, isolation, exposing their disability, even though that's against HIPAA laws, sexual abuse, pressuring, not respecting the consent of the person with disability, or economic abuse. Some other examples of other types of abuse that are specific to PWD, I'm going to use that acronym, which is people with disabilities, would be, for example, withholding medication, withholding personal care services or medical equipment, causing physical pains during routine daily living, during the care, during a care routine, like a caretaker causing physical pain during the routine daily living, using physical restraints against the person, PWD, and then using personal items or property without permission. Some statistics specific to victim survivors of crime with disabilities is people of PWD are twice as likely to be victims of a violent crime as people without disabilities. People with intellectual disabilities are sexually assaulted at 7 times the rate of people without disabilities. 1 in 5 violent crime victims with disabilities believe they are targeted due to their disability.
And besides the statistics here that Natalia just provided, you know, we need services for people with disabilities because they have specific needs through, you know, which require accommodations or communication, such as interpretation services, which are often, you know, may not be available to them in, you know, with other sources or programs. I just also wanted to mention the VOCA fund also covers this program called Safe at Home. And Safe at Home is for victims who fear harassment or more abuse from their harasser or abuser. There is a program where they can, if they have to move to flee, that their address will never be out there, including on CCAP or the Circuit Court, Wisconsin's Circuit Court information web page. So how that works is there is a specific place where their mail goes to, and then they can either pick up their mail or be sent their mail through through the safe place, through that safe address. So I just wanted to mention that. And all of that, all those programs can be found on the website I had included in the previous slide for Wisconsin. Okay, so eligibility and how to request victim advocacy services. So, you know, eligibility is pretty broad. There are just a few eligibility requirements, which you have to be a person with a disability. You've had to experience some type of victimization. There is no age restriction and no proof of disability necessary. And the crime doesn't have to be reported to the police. So we take people's word and, you know, that they have a disability and that they were victimized. So how do they get some services? Well, we have an intake process. There are many ways a person can call and do intake. You can call and speak with our Disability Rights Wisconsin intake specialist at any of our offices, or there's one general number, which is 1-800-928-8778. Because our office is only open, you know, the general Monday through Friday, 8 to 4:30. So for people who are calling or trying to get through after 4:30, they can email Disability Rights General Mailbox at info@drwi.org. Again, that's info@drwi.org. We also have a general phone message where they could leave a voicemail. And then, so what happens when we get the intake? Intakes go directly to our supervisor, Naja Rosen, or to another program team depending on the issue. So lots of times there's crossover, right? And I'll just give you an example. There's crossover with schools and VOCA. So a school's case, remember, crime can include bullying. So it can either go to the schools team, and then we can decide to do another service request under VOCA, or it could actually go to VOCA, and then later we say, okay, let's do another schools service request. And what I mean by that is we have different pots of money that we use to provide the services. Or the intakes can be addressed by any team member or assigned to specific advocates based on client needs and expertise of the advocate. So the VOCA team meets once a week on Mondays. And so during our meeting, we can go over intakes. If it's in between Mondays, Naja might put out a email message to the team saying, I got 3 cases. This is, you know, types up a little blurb about the background of the cases. And then we email her back, I'll take this one, and, you know, Ellie will take that one, and that sort of thing. Or in my case, I have been, I've been a special education advocate for 30+ years. So say Naja gets a intake that has a schools component, she'll see if I will take it. She'll reach out to me directly. So that's how our intake process works. So there's, you know, I just want to say there's several different ways to contact us. And people should be able to get through one way or another. And as far as the eligibility, it's pretty open. So VOCA shares this is good news. So each team, and again, I'll bring up the schools team, we don't have unlimited funds. So because of that, we have to, as a team, develop goals and priorities. And some of the priorities are going to be like for extreme situations. So for instance, one of the school's priorities is exclusion. And this means if a parent is called several times, pick up your child, you know, due to behavior, and the parents, you know, leaving work and having to go pick up their child because the school just can't seem to manage the behavior. Suspensions, expulsions, or cutting a child's education in half, like their schedule. You can only come 2 hours a day due to behaviors. And so those are some of our main exclusion priorities, and the other is abuse. And this means like the school is using seclusion and restraint a lot. The child may get hurt from the use of restraints. So those are our priorities. What's not a priority is cases where, you know, perhaps the child went through to see if they were eligible for special education, and the team found them not eligible. We give, in those cases, it's not like we don't provide any information or any help. We have a level system. So if you meet the priorities, it's going to be an open case, right? We'll show up at the IEP meeting, we'll work with the parent, we'll work with the school, we'll go to mediation and those sort of things. If it's a brief case, we might do a few phone calls, maybe to the special ed director. If it's a technical assistance, some parents know how to self-advocate. They just need direction on where can I find my rights and the laws regarding, you know, the issue. And so then we provide them written material. So, or the last one is information and referral. But back to the priorities, if there's, say that the student is a victim or a witness of domestic abuse, and there's a school's issue, then even though the P&A can't fund it, VOCA can take it on if like I said, the person has a disability and they were either a victim or a witness of crime. So that's how VOCA can share some of their funds with other P&A programs where they can't because of the priorities. So we also do, of course, direct advocacy to victims who are working with law enforcement to investigate and prosecute the abuse charges. The Pam Malin is really has expertise. Now, Pam is the one who also runs the VAP program up in Green Bay, but she has, you know, she has a long history of working with survivors of crime with disabilities, you know, working with the police in the criminal justice response system with, you know, the police, the prosecution, and the courts. Of course, she has, you know, develops healthy relationship and boundaries curriculum. So she's been in this for a long time. So again, like when we get a case where it's in the middle of court, Pam would be the perfect person to have her get involved or take the case. We have also provided representation in family court to assist survivors with disabilities. We just had an attorney with a family background leave, and we actually are interviewing for her position, but she helped some families with some divorce cases where they needed a divorce. And some other funds that VOCA can share is to try to target the end to the school to prison pipeline by funding special education cases where the child is a survivor of crime but is being criminally prosecuted for their actions at school. So that's another piece I talked about, the special education where there's bullying or the child is a witness to domestic violence. Well, here, this is the school to prison pipeline issue. It's where, you know, these kids are getting, you know, the tickets for disorderly conduct, and they're literally being funneled into the criminal justice system. So we get involved in that. Okay, Natalia.
All right, so though we've already touched upon a few, just to give a better idea of what the process would be like of advocacy from our ends, we wanted to outline our goals and priorities for the program, which are based off of the federal VOCA goals, but more specifically to provide emotional support to crime victims with disabilities and their families. So this can be anywhere from immediate crisis intervention. Often if someone has recently been a victim of a crime or abuse and harassment, they are in crisis mode, they are emotionally dysregulated, and sometimes just sharing their story can be part of the healing process and help stabilize and then stabilize their emotions in order to be able to navigate what to do next and how to either get out of their situation, which is still causing harm, or how to possibly prevent it from happening again. And then, so it can be just a crisis intervention, or it can also be as far as emotional support, that can also look like referrals to mental health service providers in their area that specialize in working with people with disabilities, or culturally sensitive or bilingual therapists in their area. The other goal is providing education, technical assistance, and referrals to crime victims with disabilities to promote self-determination. So one of our, biggest, I guess, overall goals as a victim advocate is to ensure that what healing, what advocacy, what empowerment means is dictated and led by the victim, the survivor themselves. And so we by no means can speak for our clients, and our goal is to try to help them navigate what stabilization, what healing looks like for them, which will vary from person to person. So, for example, if sorry, oops, I think there we go. So, for example, even if from an advocate's point of view, let's say there's abuse that happens within the home, even if as a violence a violence victim ourselves, we may believe internally that we think it's best that the survivor leave their home for safety. If that is something that the survivor victim does not want for themselves, but wants to explore other means of finding safety outside of the home, or being able to have, for example, emergency phone numbers they can call if the violence happens again, or other possibilities, then we will respect this, regardless of what we may or may not agree with or not agree with. We prioritize our clients' self-determination above all. And then the last goal is collaborating with victims to assess safety and assist with developing meaningful safety plans. So that can be anywhere from, as we had discussed before, either finding alternative housing to, if it's school's case, helping them switch schools or change classrooms, or attending their IEP meetings to be part of the discussion of a safety plan with other staff at the school, as well as helping them navigate the criminal justice system, if that is something that they, our clients would like. And not all of our clients are comfortable or want to report their crime, and there's no requirement for them to do so.
Ready?
Mm-hmm.
Sorry about that. I kept thinking you were ready. Next slide. Nope. Okay. Oh, this is your slide too.
Okay. Yeah. Just to elaborate, these are a few more specific examples of how we advocate for our clients: immediate emotional, psychological health and safety, which we discussed; personal advocacy and emotional supports; mental health counseling and care; peer supports. But what we mean by peer support is that we can refer our clients to other peer support groups and specialists that may be in their area. For example, referring if our client is along with disability, maybe also battling addiction, I have referred clients to AA groups within their area that are specific to their whatever they may be, whether it's narcotics or alcohol addiction. Facilitation of participation in criminal justice and other public proceedings arising from the crime, so accompanying our clients to courts to help them navigate an often very inaccessible legal system, helping them understand the legal jargon, etc. Legal assistance where the need for such services arises as a direct result of victimization. Public awareness and education presentations.
Actually, if I could interrupt now, there are a couple of questions that I think relate to what you're talking about now. So if you're willing, I would like to present those. The first one is, how often do you work with a client's attorney who is not an attorney that you employ at DRW, but they would have like a court-appointed attorney, for example. Do you ever interface with the attorney who is defending that person and their interests in court?
Yeah, I mean, we do limited legal assistance, but one of the things that we do is, you know, work with, if they have an attorney, we definitely work with them. There's, you know, we leave the kind of the litigation or the court stuff up to that attorney, but we can help the attorney with information to help the victim who has a disability. So that's where we, you know, can help other attorneys. So yes, we definitely do that.
Okay, and then the other question is a little different, and it was, but since we're interrupting now, it had to do with elder abuse. And how do you define, for example, some of the disabilities that some of older adults would have, and you know, some of the financial issues that might be on their head as far as how they can proceed and who can help them?
Well, we assess people in general. Our P&A does. Now our VOCA does any age, but our P&A specifically helps people up to the age of 59. At 60, they go to the Wisconsin Coalition on Aging, or their county aging and disability resource center. But some of the crimes for elders can be what we see as financial. And also if the elder has like a guardian that could be one of their children or family members, you know, more exploitation through their power in guardianship. So those are some of the things we can see. And also, you know, what about the elder scams, right? So this is identity theft. We can assist with that. So, you know, elders can go through the same kind of crime as anybody else, but you know, what we see a lot is that financial piece.
Okay, thank you. That's all I have right now.
Okay.
I just wanted to mention we also sometimes a couple of cases a few cases we've received of neglect in nursing homes by staff, and sometimes up to abuse. And so yeah, those are also types of cases that we receive.
Yeah, so then one of our VOCA team members can partner up with our P&A team members, because the P&A, you know, our main umbrella for the P&A is to prevent abuse. So yeah, and I know we're running kind of short of time, so you know what VOCA, you know, we have the funds to fund services, but there are some limitations, and there are some things that we cannot do with the VOCA funds, which is lobbying. We can't do any kind of research or studies except for our own, you know, project evaluation. We don't investigate and prosecute criminal activities. We leave that up to the police, law enforcement, and the prosecutors. We definitely can't fundraise because we are directly federally funded through a grant. And we cannot pay for salaries or management expenses that is not related to direct victim services. And finally, of course, we talked about this under eligibility. If you are not a person with a disability and you have not been victimized, then we cannot provide services to those individuals. Is this, I'm sorry, Natalia, were you going to go over this, or is this mine?
I think this is your slide.
Okay. So our victim advocacy I usually have my name on the slide and I missed this one. So the victim advocacy program, we did a semi-annual report that was from October 1st, 2020 to March 31st, 2021. And what this report does, it highlights outreach activities and staff in service and professional development. This is a new program. For instance, personally, I never worked with victims of crime. I always did special education. And when I came back, they said, you know, they wanted me to be do 50% special ed and 50% with the victim advocacy program. So I myself needed a lot of training, and all of us do. There's just a lot to learn about victim rights and the law and crimes. And so we all in trauma response from victims who get acquired disabilities from their crimes. The outreach provided was to 5 community programs, and Natalia can, being that that's her position, she can tell you a little more about her outreach. And then we received 21 remote trainings, of course, remote because we're in the COVID-19 era. I actually missed going to in-person conferences, but we had 21 remote trainings that were received. And, you know, the report highlights program challenges and successes, which we're going to briefly touch upon. So some of the external challenges, go ahead, Natalia, go ahead and start, and then I'll finish up with the external challenges.
Sure. So these are challenges that we see coming up over and over again that we try to work through on our own with outreach, but also with the people, the groups and teams that we work with to support our clients. And as I mentioned before, we know that some of the root causes of why victimization can happen to people with disabilities is due to ableism and other oppressions. And so that continues to be a challenge. And we see this on an everyday basis on our job. We see the way bullying can happen to children with disabilities within schools because of lack of education about the fact that, which, you know, we wish in an ideal world in schools and in families and in society there was more education and understanding towards the fact that people with disabilities are normal just like all of us, and we have a diversity of abilities amongst all of us, and we're neurodiverse and physically diverse, and that has nothing to do with our worth or value or importance in society. And so, but unfortunately, we have a long way to go with the fight for social justice for people with disabilities. And so we see that we fight that on an everyday basis. And this goes hand in hand with other types of oppression, such as racism, which we can't separate from ableism because we have, it comes from the same root cause of othering somebody else, right? Or the belief in any sort of supremacy for any particular group. And so we see cases of this, for example, for some of our clients that are also, let's say we have clients that are identify as mixed indigenous and also have a disability, and also maybe are learning English and are undocumented. And so there are multiple layers of oppression and barriers that they face in order to just have basic accessibility and human rights as everybody else can and should. And
okay, so I'm Natalia.
Sorry, the second point, just last point as far as external challenges I was going to mention was also insensitivity towards with sexual violence and domestic violence. And so we face this with, for example, police officers that don't believe our clients that they have been victims of any sort of violence. And so we're there to support and advocate for them to be believed.
Okay, sorry about that, but I know, Bonnie, we are running out of time, right?
Yes, we are. Unfortunately, we are at time right now. So do you think at this point in time, we can just, bring to a close and a comment from each of you? There is one other question, but let's try and you guys do what you need to do. And we have probably about another 3 or 4 minutes that we could utilize.
Sure. So, we do have some internal challenges. This is a, newer program. And so we've had staff vacancies. We've had to try out different roles and change titles. When Natalia was hired, we had a 2-month gap before she was started when the other person left. So we have some gaps before we get, the new hiree started. And we have some position turnover because, we are a nonprofit and, there are other private and state agencies that can pay a better salary with benefits. So we kind of have a challenge on keeping good folks around. And then you can just look at our program successes, but we've had quite a few. And that's all I have to say. If you have anything, Natalia, to add.
No, we hope that, this is part of the beginning of, or the continuation of alliance between our organizations and services to better support our diverse communities of people with disabilities.
Yep, and please go on our website, and we have a ton of information on all our programs, including the Victim Advocacy Program. We have resources. There are a lot of resources. So you can go on there at Disability Rights Wisconsin or WI.org. And thank you for signing up and spread the word.
Well, thank you both. There is a quick question, and I don't want the questioner to think we've forgotten them. So it's a quick comment. An intake for a minor disabled child desperately needing help had been completed by DRW in January of 2021. Since then, DRW had not returned any communication back. What is the average wait time for an organization to reach back to an individual who has been involved in that process?
Well, unfortunately, when we get a lot of intakes, we've been struggling because we have an intake person that left, and again, there's that gap before we get a new person. Actually, us advocates that don't really do the intakes, we're being asked to do the intakes. So to help out, like we had 92 calls that were like waiting in the call log. So I will apologize up front. But unfortunately, sometimes we are so busy, something gets lost in the shuffle. But I would say our normal response time, even when it's busy, is no more than a week. So if something happened, again, I apologize, have the person please call back. Call back. That's all I can say.
Okay, well, thank you very much. I didn't want that person to think we couldn't get to their questions.
Oh, no.
I wanted to make sure we did. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank both Jill and Natalia for their presentation today. I know that I learned a lot. I'm sure that those of you who participated did it as well. So this will conclude our webinar for today. We'd like to thank all of you for joining us. Please be reminded that Wisconsin Facets has over 100 trainings and webinars for the year 2022. And please feel free to check out our website calendar and register for any of those upcoming trainings that you may have interest in. And also please watch for the short evaluation that will be coming your way after today's live presentation. Again, thank you, Jill, thank you, Natalia, and thank you all for participating today. Everybody have a great day and be safe. Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.